And we're off and running. This week, jury selection began in the second round of the Karen Read trial. For those of you who don't know, Karen Read is a woman in Massachusetts who has been accused of killing her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer. John O'Keefe was found very close to death on the front lawn of 34 Fairview, which is where Brian Albert, another Boston police officer, lived. There had been a big house party the night before. It's all very suspicious about what happened to John. But Karen has been accused of murdering him by intentionally, he got out of her car. They're saying that she intentionally threw it in reverse and rammed him with her SUV and then left him to die in the snow. There's a lot of evidence that points to a lot of different things other than this happening, and the lack of relatable injuries on John's body makes me believe he was never even hit by a car. But here we are, the first jury hung, we're back for a second jury trial. She's got a very good team of defense attorneys. Now, let me just tell you, there was one addition. There's been a couple of additions, but there's one that I think is really interesting. They've added a local woman who's a lawyer who was actually an alternate juror in the first case. So she sat through the entire first case in the jury box, listening, taking notes, I'm sure forming some opinion about each of these witnesses and both the prosecutor and the defense attorney. So she's, if nothing else, a really good consultant to have there to be able to say, hey, here's what was going through my head as this testimony was being played the first time. These were the parts I found confusing. We need to explain that better. This is where someone came across as arrogant, whatever. So she's a very good, I think, inside view of what happens from a jury perspective. So I think she's very helpful to have there. And this is a fun tidbit. So Michael Proctor, who was the chief investigator for the entire case, like he's the one that was called in. He did all the investigation. He was the one in charge of all the evidence. He was the one that pulled together all of the evidence against Karen Read and said, here's all the ways she did it. Well, that guy's been shit-canned. He no longer works for the state police. In my opinion, that totally fucks the Commonwealth, because how do you say, here's a guy that is so incompetent at his job that he's no longer in his job, that there is a long track record of a number of times where he has made mistakes on the job so that he's no longer on the job. But we're going to walk in here today and try and convince you guys that this woman's guilty of murder because this was the one time. I mean, this is the one time he did everything perfect. I'm not buying it. And I think Alan Jackson, I hope he's going to have to show up and testify. He's going to have to. He's going to have to still be on the witness list. He's still going to have to be there. He's going to get eaten alive on the stand, because now it looks even worse that he's unemployed. The state doesn't even support his policing, and yet his policing is what has brought us here to this point. In the first trial, the defense was allowed to use a third-party culprit defense, meaning not only did they say Karen didn't do it, but we think these people did. And throughout the case, they put in all this evidence and witness statements and stuff that would lead you to believe these three other people were responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. This time around, the judge has ruled that they can still use that as a defense tactic, but they have to leave out one of the people. So they're allowed to still use that third-party culprit and involve Brian Albert, whose home this all happened at. Brian Higgins, who is ATF but has an office at the Canton PD, so he runs with these guys. So it's those two, the two Brians, that are allowed to be part of that third-party culprit, but she has ruled out Colin Albert, who's the nephew of Brian Albert, who was there that night. A lot of people were at this house party. It was a birthday party for Brian Jr., so there was a lot of people coming and going, but Colin was one of those people that was kind of easy to point at, in my opinion. He'd had previous run-ins with John. There was always a long-standing tiff between the two. So it seemed likely that Colin was involved, but Judge Beverly Cannone has ruled out them pointing fingers at Colin. Earlier this week, they announced that they had already identified 7 jurors. Now, this has got to be a very challenging jury pool, because I don't know how you find 16 people. That's the goal, 16 people who aren't already some sort of bias. In fact, when they polled the jury members, they call all these people and they poll everybody. There's a very small group of them that hadn't heard of it. It's like 9 people hadn't heard anything about this case. But when they said, have you heard of the case? Like, all the hands go up. Do you already form an opinion? A lot of hands went up. So it's going to be very hard for them to find people, but they found 7 so far, 4 men, 3 women. This was a couple of days ago. So we're already almost halfway home. 7 out of 16. We're moving pretty quickly. Jury selection keeps going at this pace. We could probably be in trial within the next week or 2. There's a whole lot more here. I'm going to have to come back with another video and talk about the audit. There was just an outside auditor was brought in to audit the Canton PD, and boy, did they find some interesting stuff. It's 206 pages. So I'm going to come back and do another video on that. Stay tuned. But as this continues, I will be back here a couple of times a week just giving you updates.